In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to install and use a narrow hem presser foot. This is a number 62 narrow hem presser foot to sew just a straight stitch, and this is designed for use with my Bernina 330 machine. Now you can see the difference of the style of foot. It has a coiled metal guide that runs right along this center portion, and it is spinning through the center of the foot. Now this is designed to take your fabric and it will guide through this coil and spin it around in a narrow hem as it's stitching down through the foot with a straight stitch. This is the smallest narrow hem foot I can get for my machine. It sews a 2mm narrow hem. So that's pretty narrow. There are a couple other widths for this machine, and you can look for your own machine to see what width stitch is available and the styles of narrow hem feet you have for your machine. To install this foot, I simply am going to raise that lever, remove the standard presser foot, and then insert this foot on the guide and lower that lever, and then the foot is secured to my machine. Now we have this foot installed, and you'll notice right on that front portion I have a very tiny hole that the needle is going to go up and down through. That is why this is designed for straight stitch only. If you get one that says it will sew a zigzag, it will have a wider opening for the needle to sew through on the presser foot. Then for this machine, I have my stitch set at a regular straight stitch. My stitch length is just at 2.5, and I want to make sure that my needle position is in the middle, and right now it is marked in the middle because, like I mentioned, there is only that single hole to sew through right in the center of the foot. Then I also want to make sure that I've pressed my needle to be in the down position so that I can make the transition at the beginning to use the foot properly. Now, as a general overview for how to use this foot, I'm going to show you a few quick steps, and then we'll jump into a specific tutorial based on a particular pattern. So we're going to take the fabric, it's wrong side up. I'm going to slide this under the presser foot just short of the back of the foot. I'm going to lower my presser foot, and I'm going to hold both the upper and lower thread while I sew 4 straight stitches. Now I'm going to raise the presser foot and the needle, and then I'm going to pull this whole thing out so I have the 2 threads connected and my 2 original threads. So I'm going to hold all 4 of these threads in my hand, and then I'm going to pull that through the guide, holding all 4 threads in the back. And as I work to feed that through, keeping this a little bit to the left, it will fold the edge under to start my narrow hem. Then I can lower the presser foot, and I'll continue to hold my fabric a little bit to the left as I begin to sew my hem. So you can see as that's stitching, it's creating a very nice narrow hem. It's folding this raw edge under through this metal coil. And as I swing that around to the front, you can see we have a very tiny narrow hem. So this is the interior side, and that is the right side. Now, if by chance the beginning of your hem didn't catch right where you started, you can simply go back in and just press this under with your fingers to line that up with the rest of your hem, and then just top stitch that down. In this example, I'm going to show you the difference of using a narrow hem foot and a standard presser foot to sew a narrow hem. So this is a tiny sleeve from a Mindle Beach dress, and we have this hem pressed under 1/8 of an inch twice, and I'm just going to straight stitch this first with the standard presser foot. So So that's pretty straightforward and it works fairly well. I just have to eyeball that as I'm sewing to make sure that I am keeping a consistent stitch width and that my hem was pressed under the entire time. So sewing a hem on a sleeve like this can be done with either foot. This foot, it works fairly well. So now we're just going to show you how to do that with the narrow hem foot. So to use the narrow hem foot, first we're going to slide this under and we're going to stitch the few stitches we need to start this stitch. Then I'm going to raise this and the needle is in the up position, and I'm going to pull this out so that I have threads extending, but I'm not going to cut those threads. Then we're going to bring this around and I'm going to use these threads right here and I'm going to guide this through the foot. Then I'm going to raise the presser foot and I'm not cutting the threads. I'm simply pulling this out so that I have the threads extending. And then I'm going to hold all the threads and I'm going to guide this through the narrow hem foot from the back so that my fabric slides into this guide, and that will turn that hem under. And once that starts to pull back, then I will lower the presser foot and we can stitch that narrow hemline. So you can see that's feeding that in, and then this part of the foot right here is causing that to turn under. And because this is a little bit round, I'm pulling this way to make sure that I have enough of it to wrap around that interior curve. And here we have a very narrow sleeve hem. And there you can see that from the front side. It's a very narrow, tiny hem. And it works and it retains the curve. And I can also press this back in to have the sleeve curve that is in line with the pattern piece. Now I did have a little bit of trouble catching that double turn right at the very beginning, so I would go back into this and I can carefully press this under right here and just be sure that it's pressed under as I sew the interior underarm seam, and that will catch that. But for the important part of the sleeve, the part that wraps the arm, the sleeve is hemmed nicely all the way around. And here are the two versions side by side. You can see on the first version I have the standard 1/8 inch double fold hem, and that's stitched up from the edge a little bit farther than the narrow hem. So this narrow hem foot that I have stitches a 2mm hem, which is very tiny. So the part that's folded under is less and the stitch is closer to the edge. So if I lay these on top of each other, you'll notice that I actually have two different length sleeves. So this one that did the narrow hem didn't hem under as much of the fabric as the pattern called for. So in this instance, I would want to make sure if I knew I liked the way this narrow hem foot did the hemming, that I trimmed off some of this seam allowance first, probably just trim the seam allowance out and then hem it. And then I would remove this extra part so that the finished hemline was the same as the intended finished hemline.